Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Daya Gopirana Vallabha Girivardhari Daya Gopirana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasudanandana Brajajanarandana Yasudanandana Brajajanarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Daya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Sri Radhamanav ki jai, Sri Radha Radhanath ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Now the question is, where are we in this book? I have no idea. Because I also didn't mark it. So what should I do? Just read somewhere? Anywhere. I'm asking where to read, that's the thing. Nah. And there's no one here who can tell me. Who is absent also. Yeah, but I just read something. Huh? Yeah. So you know where it is? Hare Krishna. So we'll continue to read from the Srila Prabhupada lilamrta anywhere. Bus. Okay, I'll start. Yeah. The morning after, or we're reading from Srila Prabhupada lilamrta, Planting the Seed, September 10. The morning after the initiation, Prabhupada sat in his apartment, reading from a commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam. The large Sanskrit volume lay before him on his desk as he read. He wore horn-rimmed glasses, which changed his demeanor, making him look extremely scholarly. He wore eyeglasses only for reading, and this added to the visual impression that he had now gone into deep professional meditation. The room was quiet, and brilliant mid-morning sunlight shone warmly through the window. Suddenly someone knocked on the door. Yes? Come in. He looked up, removing his glasses. As Mike and Jan, now Mukunda and Janaki, opened the door, peering in, he had asked to see them. Yes, yes, come in. He smiled, and they walked in, closed the door behind them. Two vivacious young Americans. From his expressive eyes, he seemed to be amused. They sat down before him, and Prabhupada playfully addressed them by their new initiated names. So, you are living together, but now you have taken serious vows of initiation. So, what will you do about it? Well, Mukunda seemed puzzled. Isn't there any love in Krishna consciousness? Swamiji nodded. Yes, so I'm saying, why don't you get married? They agreed it was a good idea, and Prabhupada immediately scheduled a wedding date for 2 days later. Swamiji said he would cook a big feast and hold the marriage ceremony in his apartment, and he asked Mukunda and Janaki to invite their relatives. Both Mukunda and Janaki had grown up in Oregon, and their family members found it impossible to travel such a long distance on such short notice. Only Janaki's sister Joan agreed to come. Joan, little did I know what kind of wedding it would be. All I knew was they had met a Swami and were taking Sanskrit from him, as well as attending his small storefront temple on 2nd Avenue. When I met the Swami, he was sitting beside the window in his front room, bathed in sunlight, surrounded by pots of prasadam, which he was distributing to the devotees who were sitting around him against the wall. I was a follower of macrobiotics and not so eager for taking this noonday meal. When I entered the room, the Swami said, "Who is this?" And Mukunda said, "This is Janaki's sister Joan. She's come from Oregon to attend the wedding." Swamiji said, "Oh, where is Oregon?" Mukunda said, "It's 3,000 miles away, on the other side of the United States." And he asked, "Oh, coming from so far? Very nice. And when will the other members of the family arrive?" Then I said, "I'm the only one who's coming for the wedding, Swamiji." He said, "Never mind. It's very nice that you have come. Please sit down and take some Krishna prasadam." He offered me dal, a rather moist sabji, yogurt, salad, and chapatis. But because I was a devotee of macrobiotics, all of this prasadam was very unpalatable to me. Practically speaking, it was sticking in my throat the whole time. But I remember looking over at the radiant and beautiful person who was so eager for me to take this prasadam that he had prepared. So I took it all, but in my mind I decided this would be the last time I would take this luncheon with the devotees. At any rate, somehow I finished the meal, and Swamiji, who had been looking over at me, said, "You want more? You want more?" And I said, "No, thank you. I'm so full. It was very nice, but I can't take any more." So finally the prasadam was finished, and they were all getting up to clean, and Swamiji commented that he wanted to see Mukunda, Janaki, myself, for making preparations for the wedding the next day. So when we were all there sitting in the room with him, the Swami reached over into the corner where there was a big pot with crystallized sugar syrup sticking to the outside. I thought, oh, this is supposed to be the pièce de résistance, but I can't possibly take any more. But he reached his hand into the pot anyway and filled up a huge, round, dripping gulab jamun. I said, "Oh no, I'm so full, I couldn't take any." And he said, "Oh, take. And he made me hold out my hand and take it. Well, by the time I finished the gulab jamun, I was fully convinced that this would be the last time I would ever come here. Then he began explaining how in the Vedic tradition, the woman's side of the family made lavish arrangements for the wedding, and since I was the only member of the family who had come to assist, I should come the next day and help him make the wedding feast. So the next morning at 9, while Janaki was decorating the room for the fire sacrifice, stringing leaves and flower garlands across the top of the room, I went upstairs to meet Swamiji. When I arrived, he immediately sent me out shopping with a list, 5 or 6 items to purchase. One of these items was not available anywhere in the markets, although I spoke to so many shopkeepers. When I came back, he asked me, "You have obtained all the items on the list?" And I said, "Well, everything except for one." He said, "What is that?" I said, "Well, no one knows what tumar is." He asked me, wash my hands, and sat me down in his front room on the floor with 5-pound bag of flour, a pound of butter, and a pitcher of water. And he looked down at me and said, "Can you make a medium soft dough?" I replied, "Do you mean a pastry or pie crust or short crust dough or a pâté brisé dough?" "What kind of pastry do you want? How old are you?" he said. And I said, "I'm 25, Swamiji." "You are 25," he said, "and you can't make a medium soft dough?" It's a custom in India that any young girl from the age of 5 years is very experienced in making this dough. But never mind, I will show you. So he very deftly emptied the bag of flour and with his fingertips cut in the butter until the mixture had a consistency of coarse meal. Then he made a well in the center of the flour, poured in just the right amount of water, and very deftly and expertly kneaded it into a velvety, smooth, medium soft dough. He then brought in a tray of cooked potatoes, mashed them with his fingertips, and began to sprinkle in spices. He showed me how to make and form potato kachoris, which are fried Indian pastries with spiced potato filling. From 11 until 5 that afternoon, I sat in this one room making potato kachoris. Meanwhile, in the course of the same afternoon, Swamiji brought in 15 other special vegetarian dishes, each one in a large quantity for 40 persons, and he had made them single-handedly in his small, narrow kitchen. It was rather hot that afternoon, and I was perspiring. I asked Swamiji, "May I please have a glass of water?" He peeked his head around the door and said, "Go wash your hands." I immediately did so, and when I returned, Swamiji had a glass of water for me. He explained to me that while preparing this food for offering to the Supreme Lord, one shouldn't think of eating or drinking anything. So after drinking the glass of water, I went in and washed my hands and sat down. About 2 in the afternoon I said, "Swamiji, may I have a cigarette?" And he peeked his head around the corner and said, "Go wash your hands." So I did, and when I came back, he explained to me the 4 rules of Krishna consciousness. I continued to make the kachoris, and around 3:30, 4 o'clock, it was extremely warm in the room, and as Swamiji was bringing in one of his preparations, I was wiping my arm and hand across my forehead. He looked down at me and said, "Please go and wash your hands." Again I did so, and upon returning he had a moistened paper towel for me. He explained that cooking for Krishna required certain standards of cleanliness and purity that were different than the ones I was accustomed to. So in this way we can see how Srila Prabhupada dealt with very, very new people and immediately engaged them in devotional service and began to teach them the standards of devotional service. And on the strength of his great, powerful spiritual presence, he could very quickly convince people to follow his teachings. In this regards, we understand that teaching Krishna consciousness can be done by faithfully repeating the teachings of the previous acharyas. But then if simultaneously the teacher has thoroughly realized these teachings, and then his teachings will be much more effective. And of course, Joan became Srila Prabhupada's disciple, and she became one of his leading disciples. She became Yamuna, who sings for us every day when we are at the time of the deity darshan, listening to the Govindam prayers. And she became very expert in cooking. Her first service was cooking. But Yamuna, she was like an acharya in cooking. Right? Not only did she know many recipes, I mean, we can already see from this story here that when Prabhupada asked for a medium soft dough, then she gave like a whole list. What kind of dough would you like? And she mentioned various types of dough, different pastry doughs and so on. It seemed that she knew something about cooking, even then. Anyway, as time, so her first service somehow or other became cooking, and she became very expert in learning all the different styles of cooking that Srila Prabhupada actually followed. And she made a cookbook, which is just more than a cookbook, right? It's like a historical document. It's almost like a PhD thesis. Sometimes it's referred to like that. A cookbook of extraordinary standing. Right? We have in our movement many cookbooks, but the cookbook of Yamuna is very, very authorized. It's exactly cooking according to the style that Prabhupada was cooking, and just basically she has documented that. And it's very interesting to see such a principle, because we see that parampara is coming in various ways. We have a formal parampara of initiating spiritual masters in so many generations, descending from Krishna and then coming through Madhvacharya, coming to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers, coming to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Prabhupada, and so on. That is there, but we also see how here the knowledge of cooking also comes in parampara. There is and this knowledge is preserved in so many fields. Devotees who personally learned standards from Srila Prabhupada. I mean, that is a great treasure, right, in cooking. So we should take note of Yamuna's cookbook and understand it's not just another cookbook amidst so many other cookbooks with some nice vegetarian preparations, and maybe for variety's sake, let's have a look at that. No, it's a historical document which we should treasure, and which should be really studied by those who are cooking, so that we get like actually that tradition of cooking in that way that Srila Prabhupada taught. Because of course, while Yamuna spent the whole afternoon making kachoris, Prabhupada cooked the whole feast, right, for 40 people, 15 preparations. Because Prabhupada was extremely expert. He had his cooker, right, which was a arrangement of, looks like a tiffin, different. It was made of brass, and the inside was covered with tin, as is the tradition. And then it was a multi-storied cooker, and in the bottom there would be water, and then there was a little steaming tray with holes, and you could steam the rice there. Then there was the next tiffin would be for dal, and then there would be some for the sabjis, and in this way Prabhupada could cook all these preparations all at once in one pot, right, in that cooker. He brought that from Bara Bazar in Calcutta when he came, and he used that very expertly. And in 45 minutes he could cook a full lunch, right? Full lunch with this cooker. What to speak of Prabhupada's feasts, right? He would cook amazing feasts. So Prabhupada was a very accomplished cook. About 30 people attended. The decorations were similar to the ones for the initiation a few days before, except that they were more festive and the feast was more lavish. Swamiji's front room was decorated with pine boughs, and leaves and flowers are strung overhead from one side of the room to the other. Some of the new initiates came, their large red beads around their necks. They had taken vows now, 16 rounds a day, and they chanted on their beads, just as Swamiji had shown them, and they happily, though self-consciously, called one another by their new spiritual names. Janaki. Swamiji said that I should wear a sari at my wedding, and he said it should be made of silk. I asked him what color, and he had said red. So Mukunda bought me an absolutely elegant sari and some very nice jewelry. The Swami's friends were used to seeing Janaki, as she always came with Mukunda, but usually she wore no makeup and dressed in very plain clothes. They were astonished and somewhat embarrassed to see her enter wearing jewelry, makeup, and a bread-right sari. The bride's hair was up and braided, decorated with an oval silver filigree hair ornament. She wore heavy silver earrings, which Mukunda had purchased from an expensive Indian import shop on Fifth Avenue, and silver bracelets. Prabhupada directed Mukunda and Janaki to sit opposite of him on the other side of the sacrificial fire arena, and just as at the initiation, he lit the incense and instructed them in the purification by water, recited the purification mantra, and then began to speak. He explained about the relationship between man and wife in Krishna consciousness, and how they should serve each other. And how they should serve Krishna. Prabhupada then asked Janaki's sister to present her formally to Mukunda as his wife. Mukunda then repeated after Swamiji, I accept Janaki as my wife and I shall take charge of her throughout both of our lives. We shall live together peacefully in Krishna consciousness, and there never will be any separation. And then Prabhupada turned to Janaki. Will you accept Sriman Mukunda Das Brahmachari as your life's companion? Will you serve him always and help him to execute his Krishna conscious activities? And then Janaki replied, yes, I accept Mukunda as my husband throughout my life. There shall never be any separation between us, either in happiness or distress. I shall serve him always, and we shall live together peacefully in Krishna consciousness. No one knew anything of what was going on except Swamiji. He led the chanting. He gave the lines for the bride and the groom to exchange. He told them where to sit and what to do. He, in fact, had told them to get married. He had also cooked the elaborate feast that was waiting in the kitchen for the completion of the ceremony. Prabhupada asked Mukunda and Janaki to exchange their flower garlands, and after that to exchange sitting places. He then asked Mukunda to rub some vermilion down the part in Janaki's hair, and then to cover her head with her sari. Next came the fire sacrifice, and finally the feast. The special feature of the wedding was the big feast. It turned out to be quite a social success. The guests ate enthusiastically, asked for more, and raved about the sensational tastes. Prabhupada's followers, who were accustomed to the simple daily fare of rice, dal, sabji, and chapatis, found the feast intoxicating and ate as much as they could. Many of Mukunda's friends were macrobiotic followers, and at first they fastidiously avoided all the sweets. But gradually the enthusiasm of the others wore down their resistance, and they became captivated by the Swami's expert cooking. God, he's a good cook, said Janaki. Bruce, who'd missed the first initiation, was seeing the Vedic fire sacrifice and tasting the Swami's kachoris for the first time. He resolved on the spot to dedicate himself to Krishna consciousness and became one of Swamiji's disciples as soon as possible. Of course, he became Brahmananda, right? And it's nice that, yes, the kachori is highlighted here because Brahmananda, as we know, was a lover of prasadam, not just your average lover of prasadam. We are all lovers of prasadam, but Brahmananda and prasadam, that was another dimension, and it also changed Brahmananda's dimensions over time. Quite, what shall we say? Brahmananda had a very big heart, and Brahmananda also got a very big body. Brahmananda was just, when it came to prasadam, in a dimension of his own. He was a great, dedicated devotee of prasadam. There's one story where Tamal Krishna Maharaj had received from Srila Prabhupada a large Simply Wonderful. And that, he kept it, and then at prasadam, he put it on his plate, and he was going to eat it at the end. And Brahmananda was sitting next to him. And then suddenly Brahmananda, his hand went like, shoof, and he stole it and popped it in his mouth right there. And then Tamal Krishna was like, to Prabhupada, he just took my Simply Wonderful. And Prabhupada said, that is the nature of mercy. If you don't honor it right away, it may just disappear. So that's an important point, a very significant point, right? I mean, the point is not that stealing of prasadam is authorized, in case you thought it was. No, the point rather is that that when we get special mercy, we should honor it straight away, take advantage of it straight away. Don't miss that opportunity, a direct sweet from the hand of Prabhupada. Obviously, take it straight away. When special mercy comes, don't hesitate. So continue reading. Almost all the visitors personally approached Swamiji to thank him and congratulate him. He was happy and said it was all Krishna's blessings, Krishna's grace. After the ceremony, Mukunda and his wife entertained many of the devotees and guests in their apartment. The evening had put everyone in high spirits, and Hayagriva was reciting poetry. Then someone turned on the television to catch the scheduled interview with Allen Ginsberg, the poet, and much to everyone's happiness, Allen began playing harmonium and chanting Hare Krishna. He even said there was a Swami on the Lower East Side who was teaching this mantra yoga. Krishna consciousness was new and unheard of, yet now the devotees were seeing a famous celebrity perform kirtan on television. The whole evening seemed auspicious. Back at his apartment, Prabhupada, along with a few helpers, cleaned up after the ceremony. He was satisfied. He was introducing some of the major elements of his Krishna conscious mission. He had initiated disciples, he had married them, and he had feasted the public with Krishna prasadam. If I had the means, he told his followers, I could hold a major festival like this every day. So we see how pushing on the Krishna consciousness mission is not only about teaching the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, but to also introduce the culture of Krishna consciousness and to introduce a practical way of life so that people can actually begin to practice Krishna consciousness. And as part of that, Srila Prabhupada was introducing initiations and now introducing a marriage. Although as a sannyasi, it was a little unusual to do so, because sannyasis generally did not conduct marriages, but for the sake of pushing on the Sankirtan mission, Srila Prabhupada was ready to do so. And at a time when amongst young people the thought of marriage was not so much in the forefront. The 60s, it was a very experimental time, a time when young people were feeling suffocated in the post-war recovery culture that they grew up in, and things seemed so materialistic. After the war, the main focus was the economy. Therefore, the generation of their parents was very much preoccupied with bringing the material situation back in order. And it appeared so materialistic that a whole generation just turned away from this materialism. The Beatles became like the prophets of that generation and saying, "Money can't buy you love," right? Which summed up the spirit of the time. Therefore, Prabhupada's followers were all part of that young generation, and they were looking for a new way of life. And the forerunners of that, they'd all settled there on the Lower East Side. So the people that Prabhupada attracted on the Lower East Side were all part of that generation and part of that hippie culture. And somehow or other, being a vegetarian in those days practically meant being macrobiotic. Macrobiotic was, I also used to be macrobiotic. I don't know about Maharaj, but I was eating with chopsticks and everything was yin and yang. You know, it had to be. Macrobiotics came from Japan, and it was like, it had two major teachers. One was George Oshawa, who gave the general idea of it, how there are two major forces in the Taoistic philosophy, which are like yin and yang. Yang, the contracting force, and yin, the expanding force. In food, yang, all the salty preparations, and yin, all the rich, succulent, opulent, sweet things. And it said, in one's food, in one's eating habits, one should be more yang. That's why, it was all about being more yang, and that society was too yin. And there is truth in that, and maybe the modern lifestyle is definitely too yin. Eating all these, yang is not very popular, kind of salty, bitter. It is like sweet, juicy, saucy. These kind of things make up more the modern food package, all yin. So considered to be very bad for health. That's why all these macrobiotics were into being yang, and sweets were like, a little bit, but no sugar, oh no, absolutely no sugar. I mean, honey also, little bit, some syrup, some fruit syrup, apple syrup, for example. That was just about okay. So it wasn't very sweet, but some raisins, not too many. It was quite yin, Better chickpeas and brown rice. But I also remember how I was a member of a youth center, which was dedicated to macrobiotics. There was a restaurant that was macrobiotic, and a biological dynamic shop that sold all the ingredients, and we had a tea house, and we had big team meetings, and we just passed a big resolution that there was absolutely no coffee in the tea house, and only grain coffee, surrogate, was allowed, and all that. And after that big meeting, after that big meeting, we all thought we did something really good. And then we went to a restaurant on the main marketplace and had apple pie with cream to celebrate our decision. Because what was lacking, although we had some sense of an ideal, we didn't have the strength to implement it. We didn't have the strength to really implement it in our own life. Some were diehards. I even lived in a macrobiotic commune, right? And everything was macrobiotic in the house. And it's just one person was picking herbs from the forest and cooking them for us with brown rice. But I smuggled some cheese into my room, locked the door, and devoured it. Because how is it possible to control the senses? How is it possible to make such an austere commitment, right, without a higher taste? And therefore it's not surprising that Prabhupada's feast won, and that all these macrobiotics fell down from their rigid practices and ate Prabhupada's feast. And Janaki said, God, is he a good cook? God. and all of us macrobiotics, it went out of the window. What can I say, And with it, my chopsticks, right? And everything. No, I could even eat dal with chopsticks, Maharaj. I could. Soup with chopsticks, I could. It was a slow process. But you hold both the chopsticks together, closed, right? And then, okay, long swoops. And then bring your mouth closed. And there it goes. The soup goes in. Of course. What can be said? Yes. But the transcendental taste of Krishna Prasadam and the transcendental recipes of Krishna Prasadam are full of taste. And we know that is not extravagant. Prabhupada said, if I had the means, I could hold a major festival like this every day. That is the requirement to hold such festivals, if not every day, regularly. Because sarira avijaja yudendriya tahikala jivafale visaya sakare tarmaje jivayati lobamai sadurmati tagajita katina sansare krishna bharadaya moy Gauribhara Jiva Joy, Swaprasadam Dilabai, Senamrita Paurada Krishna Gunagao, Prema Lako, Chaitanya Nitai. The favorite song of the devotees, right? I mean, if we could choose one, that would probably be the number one, right? And then it's a very nice song. The senses are a network leading to death. We sing it very happily. It's sort of intense, right? But it is this prasadam that we received by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda that actually can save us from the most voracious of all senses, the tongue, which is very difficult to control. And when the tongue is not controlled, belly not controlled, genital not controlled, and in this way we will become a victim of uncontrolled senses. So prasadam is an essential element in spiritual life. Essential. Didn't even turn off the phone because it was... So Prabhupada's mission was spreading, and there was philosophy, there was kirtan, but it was also practical. It was also something you could do. Yes. If Krishna consciousness is only philosophy, then its intellectuals will appreciate it, and maybe even some who will be attracted to it, but it requires a culture. Srila Prabhupada commented that this Krishna consciousness is a cultural conquest. There's a culture, there's a Vaishnava culture. When we read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, then we also see that a good portion of the Chaitanya Charitamrita is about prasadam. Right? There's a lot. I mean, the devotee is always taking prasadam. There's cooking going on. There's recipes, right? There's like whole portions with one recipe after another. You go like, and all like exotic names, Amrita Keli, and so on. And you're just looking at it like, okay. And those who are more familiar, they will know. Of course, when we are in Italy, I was in Italy, and I also have a diet. Right? So I was in Italy, and one local devotee goes, Maharaj, please, Maharaj, can I invite you to take prasada in my home? So I go, yes, thank you so much. Yes, of course. That's very kind of you. Okay, I come to the house. There's an elderly man. And he says, Maharaj, I want to show you my garden. And he takes me to his garden. And he says, Maharaj, here are the tomatoes, Maharaj, here are the tomatoes. And he goes, oh, these are very nice tomatoes. I go, yes. He says, yes, Maharaj, these are the tomatoes, that my wife has cooked for you today, in your lunch. And by then, I can't tell him that my Ayurvedic doctor has told me no tomatoes. Impossible. Anyway, the story goes on, we're sitting at the table, and he goes, my wife, she's very old now. It's very difficult for her to cook. But today, Maharaj, she went for you into the kitchen. And they bring out the specialists, all the prasadam, and I'm looking at it like, oh my God. Tomatoes, oh my God. Cheese, oh my God. Anyway, just act as if it's okay. And then you go like, Maharaj, for you, my wife, she has arthritis, Maharaj. It's so hard for her to cook. But today, for you, she made this special preparation. You go, okay. And then they come out, they come out with it's apple fritters dipped in sugar. Yeah? It's like full sugar grains on the outside, apple fritters dipped in sugar. Now, I mean, I stopped eating that stuff, like 30 years ago. I mean, impossible. What can I do? I can give you 10 reasons why I can't eat apple fritter. Deep fried slices of apple, right, in white batter, and then dipped in full grains of sugar. So anyway, they're all looking at me with so much love. I strangled the thing down. I somehow swallowed it. Then they goes, Maharaj, you like it? I go, oh, it was very nice. They say, oh, Maharaj, she has made another one, and they bring the other one. Now, now it was getting too much. There was a big plant on the table. And what could I do? I had to save my life. I put it in the plant. I pray they never found it. What to do? It was just too much. Oh, God. So in this way, sometimes prasadam takes on a particular character according to the country where it is prepared. In Italy, there's going to be tomatoes and some other preps, right? And in Hong Kong, the prasadam was noodles, right? Noodles, what can we say? It's natural that it takes on some of the local flavor. But when we go to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, then we get preparations, which are the preparations of the spiritual world. And the spiritual culture, the culture of the spirit, and Prabhupada cooked like that. So that's also something I just wanted to mention, that the feast that Prabhupada cooked was not just, a feast with his particular style of cooking, but actually his style of cooking was the style of cooking of Lord Chaitanya and his associates, and was actually representing the culture of the spiritual world. It starts with the next chapter, and then at the top of the chapter there is just a little excerpt from the East Village, and I'll read that and then I'll stop. So the next chapter, chapter 9, is called Stay High Forever. But while this was going on, an old man 1 year past his allotted 70, wandered into New York's East Village and set about to prove to the world that he knew where God could be found. In only 3 months, the man, Swami A.C. Bhaktivedanta, succeeded in convincing the world's toughest audience, bohemians, acid heads, potheads and hippies, that he knew the way to God. Turn off, sing out, and fall in. This new brand of holy man, with all due deference to Dr. Leary, has come forth with a brand of consciousness expansion that's sweeter than acid, cheaper than pot, and non-bustable by fuzz. How is all this possible? Through Krishna, the Swami says, from the East Village, October 1966. So just sort of shows the context, the times, and what was going on there. And it was the hippie world, right? And consciousness expansion through drugs was the going thing. And if you weren't part of that, you were a square, right? Complete square. And you were not worth being listened to, and there comes Srila Prabhupada, and totally from a transcendental platform, not caring, just like we read in the previous chapter how Janaki comes in with lots of jewelry and a sari and so on, and that was like totally out of it. That was like sort of like, these were all symbols of mammon, symbols of like materialism. It's like all these ornaments, right? The establishment, the regular people, they would walk around like that. But the hippie generation, they weren't like using that kind of ornaments, right? No way. Like there were hippies who would make ornaments from wire and some beads themselves, and like, and those you could get on the street, and like that was the hippie decoration and the type of, so, and jeans, like nowadays of course everyone wears jeans, but there were no jeans. When I grew up, I don't know how Maharaj grew up, but when I grew up, we had to wear formal clothes. I go to school in gray pants with a crease, right? And that was the way it was. And in my country we don't have school uniforms, but that was just, everyone dressed formal. And then the hippies, they start wearing blue jeans. and they would bleach them, and and that was like revolutionary. And if they had those tears, that was, then it was really cool. And of course now you buy them pre-bleached and with rips designed into them, and that's mainstream. Everybody's got that. That's normal, right now. But that was what the in crowd was wearing. The in crowd, right? So it was an interesting time, and Prabhupada was with these people, with the in crowd, making inroads, as we can see, and that is amazing. Because somehow or other, these people were looking, not uptown in Dr. Misra's ashram with the wealthy elderly ladies who had some interest in hearing about exotic philosophy, but who would never change their ways, but with the young people on the Lower East Side. That is where Prabhupada was, where life was simple and austere, but where things were moving, where people were searching, and the time was ripe. By Krishna's arrangement, Prabhupada came at the right time, at the right place. New York as the gateway for Krishna, to take Krishna consciousness to the world. Prabhupada came to New York, but not with the idea to preach in New York. Prabhupada came to New York with the idea to preach to the world, to preach to the Western world. He always saw New York as the gateway to the world. Therefore, international society for Krishna consciousness. Not just, a little storefront. No, in that storefront, international society for Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada always thought of the world. Even while he was there with a handful of people, and he had to do the cleanup after the feast. Even then, thinking of the world. I'll stop. Any comments, any questions? Yeah, it's very nice, your comments, Maharaj. We enjoy thoroughly.
I visited Singapore quite a bit, and they have these open restaurants, no sides, and Chinese, because there's big Chinese population, and they use chopsticks, and you see them, they're almost eating with their mouths off the plate. They're just it's just scoop, scoop, scoop. It's not like, it's quite funny. It looks really gross, actually. Kind of slurping off the plate. But we had a devotee, Mother Archa Vigraha, who, I don't know if you would have met her.
Yeah, she was in Vrindavan.
Yeah, okay.
Left her body there.
Yeah. So, and unfortunately she passed away. But she was really nice. But before she became a devotee, she was definitely vegan. And maybe she was macrobiotic or something. But she told us she lived on brown rice for 12 years. Yeah. And then one devotee brought her to the temple for the first time. She was interested, she was very alternatively minded. And she was very interested that we are vegetarian. So she came, and it was a Sunday. And in those days, maybe now, I guess, anyway, in Johannesburg, Mulder's Drift, the Sunday feasts were super extravagant. Everything was deep fried, cream, sugar. Sure, it was really extravagant. And she saw this, and she thought, these people are crazy. They're vegetarians, that's good, but they're crazy vegetarians. And she didn't come back for a few months. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She didn't come back for a few months, but then she started coming and she became a really nice devotee.
Right.
But it was interesting. She was really put off by the prasadam.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it also became then maybe that people got the big feast, right? And didn't see the other side of just the rice, dal, sabji, chapati, the more basic diet that Prabhupada was serving out at other times. And sometimes ISKCON also developed a lifestyle, a feast every day, right? Which obviously, is not healthy at all. And these people, they were more on the bodily consciousness of life, the bodily concept of life. So they naturally would think about one of the reasons why they were vegetarians was ethical reasons, and the other was health, right? So very health conscious people. And in some ways they were right, how much sugar, how much ghee, how much deep fried stuff can you just eat, Of course, different people have different powers, like Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj used to be very powerful, When I first came to South Africa, Maharaj could just eat and digest these meals, and sometimes I was invited and I was knocked out for days. Really, I couldn't, And it's like, oh, gosh, how can Maharaj do this? But he could. He could, of course. But time catches up with everyone, and sooner or later. So health is a factor. We should not just eat unlimitedly opulent prasadam. Also some basic rice, dal, sabji is and chapati is our staple diet. But yeah. A very nice movement. And prasadam is a very big part of the niceness of our movement. So thank you very much. Oh, Jai has
Some of the devotees who don't know, Maharaj was a very accomplished cook. I remember he used to cook the 8 o'clock offering and very far out chutneys and spicy chutneys. And of course, everything was deep fried then. Maybe we should get some tips, those who cook in 8 o'clock.
If you turn the microphone and hold it more like horizontal. No. If you hold the microphone like this, not you hold it vertical, then we cannot hear. If you turn your hand and speak like that and hold it 15 centimeters away, then we can hear what you say. I'm a professional singer, so I learned that.
Should I repeat that?
Yeah, I didn't hear a word.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, for those who don't know, Maharaj was a very accomplished cook.
15 centimeters away.
Remember, he used to cook the 8 o'clock offering, and used to make these far out chutneys, very spicy. For those who want tips, should approach Maharaj for.
Oh, I see. Well, Maharaj used to do these cooking demonstrations at Ratha Yatra, and competitions with Bibi Govinda Maharaj even, which is, I saw that one. That was interesting. We all came for that one, isn't it? Those who were around, we saw that. We hope that will happen again after the lockdown. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So if I'm not there,
When this all, then you should come in. I said, yeah. But he said, no. Classes and all that.
Christian, you sing. Haribol.